Welcome, family and friends, both here and online, to this celebration of the wonderful life of Alan Dwyer McCrady. I'm the Reverend Kevin Carson, and it is my privilege to welcome you on behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Idaho Falls. We come to this sacred space as people have come throughout human history to remember and pay tribute to a life well lived, to reflect upon the great gifts offered by this father, this husband, this grandfather, and friend. It is never easy to say goodbye or to sum up a long, unique life in the span of one afternoon. And this is especially true of someone like Alan, who lived a long and very interesting life. Here today, we pay tribute to Alan's kindness, to his generosity, and to his great spirit that touched and nourished so many lives. Let this time and place turn grief into joy and renew our faith in the human spirit. A note on our music, Jessica will be performing our first hymn as an instrumental, but later in the service, when we do hymn number 123, Spirit of Life, she'll be singing it, and you're welcome to join along while remaining seated if you so are so inspired. So just keep that in mind. Knowing Alan McCrady when he was an active member of this congregation, and I really wish that I had. As I prepared for this service and learned about his many interests and the trajectory of his life, it became clear that he was one of those fascinating people you often meet in our UU congregations, people who can enthrall us with their knowledge and their unique stories. Alan Dwyer McCrady was born December 3rd, 1928 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to Roland Allen McCrady and Ethel Selena Dwyer, joining his sister Janice, born in 1926. His early years were spent in the family homes in Edgewood, Pennsylvania, and Daytona Beach, Florida. After his sophomore year at Edgewood High, he enrolled in the University of Chicago at the age of 15, receiving his degree in 1947. That summer, he visited Norway and began a lifelong interest in the Norwegian language and people. While attending the University of Pittsburgh from 1947 to 48, Allen enlisted in the Pennsylvania National Guard and joined the National Speleological Society, a group interested in the study of caves and their contents. In the fall of 1948, Allen entered Pitt Law School, a course of studies interrupted on September 5, 1950, when he was called upon for service in the Korean War. He was granted a furlough to marry his college sweetheart, Marilyn Jean Herr of Ben Avon, Pennsylvania, on May 26, 1951. Sergeant McCrady served the remainder of his enlistment with the Korean Military Advisory Group based in Daegu, Korea, and was discharged on May 26, 1952. Their first daughter, Allison Maeve, was born in 1953. Megan Ann followed in 1955, and Roland Drew Hamilton arrived in 1959. Allen passed the bar exam in the summer of 1953 and was also awarded a Doctor of Jurisprudence in 1968. He divided his time between practicing law and collecting fossils for Dr. John E. Gilday of the Carnegie Museum of Natural History until his wife Marilyn succumbed to metastatic breast cancer and passed away in October of 1970. In 1975, Allen quit the law and began an internship at the Smithsonian's Vertebrate Paleontology Laboratory. This would not have been possible without the aid and support of Joanne Toth, whom Allen married on September 26, 1975. The Carnegie Museum became Allen's employer in 1976 until January 1st, 1986, the same day that Joanne's job at Westinghouse in Pittsburgh ended with her division's sale. The McCradys moved to Idaho Falls in February of 1986. When Westinghouse offered Joanne a job in the personnel department at the site in Idaho Falls, and Allen discovered a job opportunity at the Idaho Museum of Natural History at Idaho State University in Pocatello. Joanne retired from Westinghouse in December 1992, and Allen retired from the Idaho Museum of Natural History in January 1994. Joanne passed away on March 5th, 2018. Allen was a life member of the Sons of Norway and held offices in his local lodge. He was a fellow and life member of the National Speleological Society and was an honorary member of the Pittsburgh Grotto of that organization. The Society of Vertebrate Paleontology granted him the Skinner Prize for his efforts in collecting vertebrate fossils. He was a member of Phi Gamma Delta fraternity and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Allen had numerous other hobbies and interests. He was at various times and places a justice of the peace, a poet, a lawyer, an insurance salesman, a building manager, a ditch digger, a sculptor, a husband, caregiver, and a caring father. He was a planner and a giver to his Unitarian Universalist Church. And I've heard about his practical involvement in maintaining our building and in the decision to reorient the pews to their present layout. Some of you may want to share more about that with us in a few minutes. His favorite philanthropy was informal loans and grants to deserving paleontology students, but his gifts to the museums were public and substantial. Allen is survived by his daughter Allison McCrady of Idaho Falls in Maine, his daughter Megan McConnell of Idaho Falls, his son Drew McCrady of New Hampshire, grandsons Alex Sapiel and Dale Robertson of Maine, grandsons Ian McConnell of Idaho and Nate McConnell of Washington, 3 great-grandchildren, Susan, Caitlin, and Lucas of Maine, niece Meredith Shea of Florida, nephew Steve Steinkirchner of Pennsylvania, and hundreds of cousins. He was preceded in death by his parents, wives Marilyn and Joanne, sister Janice, and two nephews, Rick and Pete Steinkirchner. At this time, I invite any of Alan's family members to come up and share memories of gratitude and affection.
Sorry. That's better. As you could tell by the lovely pamphlet that my father left for you of his writings, he was a very organized man. One of the photos over there is the photo that he had chosen for his obituary, but we didn't find it until later when we opened the safety deposit box, and he was just very prepared. He told us maybe 20 years ago that he was going to pass away, and he lived for another 20 years. But he was very prepared, and I have something here that he had in the safety deposit box that obviously he wanted someone to read, so I'm going to do it. Dad also has a lot of, he read a lot of books. He read so many books, and he wrote so many things, and I'm not exactly sure where this comes from. It's pages from a book. It says, "When death comes. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps that purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness. And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and consider eternity as another possibility, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, toward silence, and each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom, taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I had made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. And definitely my father didn't visit this world, he inhabited it. He was a very strong presence, as I'm sure some of you knew. He had definite opinions. When it was time for dinner, it was 6 o'clock, it was time for dinner. And sometimes there was a bunch of harumphing from the chair by the television, and if you didn't go and give him an update, okay, Dad, the meat will be done in 5 minutes, he would sit in that blue chair and you'd hear him, you know, it's time for dinner. My father, as I said before, really liked to read. We have so many books. We have so many books. And I think this that he saved for us to read for him was from a Norwegian book. I don't know which one, but he read a lot of books in Norwegian with an English translation next to him, so if he got caught up on any words, he could refer to the English book. Anyway, This leads me to a very funny story. My father, who liked physical books in his hands, decided maybe 10, 15 years ago to try a Kindle. And he would read stuff on it, and then he would have problems with the technology. Most of the problems that he had with the Kindle is that my father had very big fat fingers that were not meant for delicate work. It's amazing he was able to tease tiny fossils out of rock, but he managed to do that, but he couldn't hit the little buttons on the Kindle. And one day he just became so infuriated at it that he marched into the kitchen, opened the tool drawer, you know, that junk drawer that everybody has that has stuff in it, and he pulled out this little ball-peen hammer that ended up in there because my brother had it in a toy kit when he was a kid. So he pulls this hammer out and he beats that Kindle to death. No more Kindle, but thousands and thousands of books more. That was my dear old dad, and I am certainly going to miss him. I think you may notice that his ashes are with his Viking helmet. I don't know if any of you saw him on the parade float that the Sons of Norway had way back in the day in the 90s, but he was resplendent in his outfit with the helmet and all sorts of other things. He even had boots made, but he looked lovely in it. When he lay in hospice, he asked my brother for a glorious death, and we are going to provide it today. We have a small Viking boat which we are going to send down the Snake River aflame with some of his ashes in a small capsule. And if any of you would like to join us later on this afternoon, right about sunset, we will be at the Gem Lake boat dock, sending Dad off to Valhalla. Who's next?
And yesterday it was really fun watching Drew and Ian make their little pyrotechnics for that. This red dictionary was fond of my sons and Alex and Dale. Every time they'd ask him, "What does this mean?" he would hand this dictionary to them and say, "Look it up." So the boys and I got together and we came up with a list of words from the dictionary that we felt best described grandfather. And that's what he liked to be called, was grandfather, not papa, or anything like that. So number 1, father and grandfather. A man who exercises paternal care over another, a protector or a provider. I have many. I couldn't have done it without my dad and Joanne as a single mom. And he gave them so much love and all kinds of good things that they still retain. Number 2 is mentor, a wise and trusted counselor. They learned all about tools, they learned about words, they learned about books, they learned about fossils. And I couldn't ask for a better teacher or a mentor than my dad. Number 3 is pragmatic. Busy, active, pertaining to the pragmatic point of view and a practical considerations. That's Dad. Number 4 is stoic, impassive, characterized by a calm, austere fortitude. That was Dad. Inquisitive his whole life. Bones, everything, books. Given to inquire or research, desirous of or eager for knowledge. Number 6 is gumption, initiative, resourcefulness, courage. Number 7 is fair, free from bias, dishonesty, or injustice. He was a bibliophile, which means one who loves or collects books. He was a melomaniac, which means a person who has great appreciation for music. We grew up listening to bagpipes, opera. What was the genuflect? What? Tom Lehrer, all the time. He was a polyglot, a person who has command of a number of languages. English, for sure, French, German, Norwegian, and he went and studied Gaelic in Ireland after he retired. There are many, 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 many more words that describe my dad. Some of them are good and some of them are fun. But yes, he was a great curmudgeon. I wasn't going to say that. Yeah. But we loved him so much. And we appreciate all of you here that have known him and befriended him and Mom and been there along the way. And it weighs a ton.
Sorry, I don't have any props. As many of you have discussed, my father could be a curmudgeon. He could be opinionated, very strong, opinionated, and judgmental. But at the same time, many don't know. I mean, others have been coming forward about how much of a mentor he was, and how helpful he was. And I remember some from my youth, some of the things that he did as a justice of the peace, helping a young black couple who had no place to marry, and opening up our house for free for them, and providing a place for them to get married, and enlisting us to throw rice, as they left the house, to give them some feeling of a marriage, of a real regular marriage. I also remember him as helping anybody who needed help. Even before the word trans or anything like that, there was a friend, Annie Runka, who was very much not confused and about her gender identity, and how he helped counsel her about that, with helping with her transition, helping with some of her confusion, and some of the other people that were trying to move her in one direction or the other, and try to make sense of what was happening to her, and giving her much comfort and strength and a purpose. And these are things that not many people know about him. And of course, so many of his friends who he helped were in trouble and needed either money or time or just somebody to talk to. He was always there for them. And he was always there for me and my sisters. I always knew that if I needed anything, that he would be there for me, no matter what. And even though he was judgmental, he would put that aside, and he would do whatever was necessary and right. And that is what I remember about my father.
I don't really have anything prepared, so I'll keep it fairly short. my grandfather, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be the man am today. Not that I'm much of one, but I mean, without him, I wouldn't even be able to properly wipe my rear end. So, quite frankly, thank you for being there for me, grandfather. And I'll miss you a lot.
At this point, gratitude and affection.
My name is Arthur Cole, a longtime member of this church. I have a message for Alan. Dear friend Alan, I remember well when you and Joanne started attending our Sunday morning services at what was then the Idaho Falls Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. For my collection of church directories, that must have been in the early 2000s. At that time, during our Sunday services, we would still have time to share our lives' milestones by walking up to the front of the sanctuary. But instead of milestones, however, you would often get up and share some very profound, sometimes mysterious, sometimes hilarious, and unexpected words of wisdom. Your aphorism of the day. During coffee hour, you would sit at the end of a table in the fellowship hall and wait for people to come to you and discuss the events of the week, or, when you were in a good mood, the topic of the sermon. Later in 2016 and following years, you hosted the Touchstone group at your house, touchstone is a program by the Unitarian Universalist Association for small groups to explore subjects as varied as truth, justice, harmony, forgiveness, prayer, and many others. That led to very interesting discussions, especially since you were the group's contrarian. That is not meant in a negative way, because often your way of seeing things brought us to more in-depth thinking. You and I often didn't agree on things and needed to argue forever. In a way, that was what attracted us to each other. My dear friend Alan, unfortunately, it is time now to say goodbye. Know that you have touched my heart and my soul, and will continue to live in them as long as I live. Goodbye, my friend.
My name is Bob Kitch. Several years ago, a few years before COVID even came along, I was with my wife at a UU service auction, and I was offering an editorial service. I'm a retired typewriter, and I was minding my own business, and my editorial service came up. I expected, oh, maybe somebody wants a resume edited or a few pages of an article or something. His hand shot up. It said $150. So after I got my jaw off the floor, I found out there was a guy named Alan McCrady and an article he wanted to publish. So I worked with him on a failing furnace, the Alliance furnace west of the Alleghenies. Well, he didn't know it, but I was an ex-history major as well as an English major. I was fascinated by this. It turned out to be a very interesting technological article on just why an iron forge in western Pennsylvania, the first iron forge west of the Alleghenies, would fail. And it turned out that it was an old story. A story of people getting in too deep, people with interest in making money out of a technology that they didn't quite have the expertise to complete. And so after several years, the furnace failed, and Alan's ancestor, Peter Marmeen, went on to fulfill his life and become an interesting subject for Alan. When he was researching his ancestors, he came upon the furnace, became increasingly interested in just why an iron forge, which should be a very successful and profitable business in the area around Pittsburgh and west of the Alleghenies, would fail. And as I said, it's an old story of a little bit of overreaching technology. But it gave me a chance to work with Alan for 3 or 4 years on that article, and we got it. I think we were both very proud of the fact that it got accessioned to be put into the electronic collection and the general collection of the Carnegie Library, so that all the research that he did would not be lost. He had diligently and thoroughly researched the original primary sources of the furnace, from the Carnegie Institute to the University of Michigan to Dickerson College to various private collections around the country, to find out just what the information, the truth, the historical truth of the Alliance furnace was. And I was really proud to work with him on that, and to work with him on a couple of subsequent projects that were unfortunately cut short. It was my privilege to work with him on these projects. Thank you.
I'm Mary Thompson. In 1990, when I came out to ISU, I ended up with being the only paleo grad student at the time there, and had two of the most amazing men that made me who I am today as far as paleontology, Bill Ackerson and Alan McCrady. There's so many memories, good, bad, and different. One I'd like to share is one of the earliest and one of my favorite. Very quickly after arriving, we were out in the field. We had, in northern Idaho, to retrieve a mammoth jaw that was eroding out of the side of a ravine. And it was about 6 foot up the side of the ravine and about 3 foot from the top. The 2 guys that were with us left to go back and get more supplies, and we had placed an extension ladder sort of over the scree slope that we could get up to that. So here's Alan, Bill, and myself sitting there, and Alan goes, well, someone has to go up there and wet that specimen down with butyl, with this chemical we used in. He's looking at me. Bill looks at him and goes, she's afraid of heights. Alan goes, yeah, right. Up you go. So I go over and start working my way up the ladder. I am deathly afraid of heights. The ladder is shaking so much. And granted, there's maybe 2-3 feet between the ladder and the ground. It's lifting off the slope. All of a sudden, I hear this voice behind me going, oh my God, she is afraid of heights. He took it as his mission that I would be able to climb ladders. I am still afraid of heights to this day, but I can get up on a 6-foot ladder. I can get up on a chair. I can change a light bulb. How he did it, yeah, he was a curmudgeon, and when he got it in his mind, he made it happen. Alan, I miss you dearly, and I love you, and I miss you, and I know, Sue, I know Bill and Alan are having these discussions about some paleo, and I would always be in the middle of it. Someday, I'll be right there with them again, and I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Joyce Lane, and shortly after Joanne retired from work, I started cleaning houses for these people when they lived over on Oak Trail. Can everybody hear me? Lord of the light. And I took various people in with me to their home, and we cleaned house. And I think it was, I can't remember the year, but how long have they been over where they are?
Oh, since '99, they lived on Monahan Court, yeah.
Okay, I helped them move there. Packed boxes and packed books. Yes, and then my friend Rhonda retired from the Bank of Commerce, and she says, I just want to work part-time, so can I work with you there? And so Rhonda came over and worked with me. And those times that I was in their home, Joanne and Alan and the kids treated me so good. And I was so glad to be of service to them. And, he was a wonderful, wonderful man. Joanne was equally his partner. And I just really, really bless the time that I was. But nobody should have to live till 96. I'm Rhonda Stevens, and I feel like I'm a member of McCrady family. You are. He always made me feel like I was special, and he always helped me with any of my problems that I had. And my husband's disabled, so I talk to him a lot, and he always was there for me. And I remember when I first started cleaning with her and they moved over to Mountain Court, they were gone, somewhere they were gone, and they were cleaning. We always liked to clean to music. So I said, well, we'll just turn on Alan's music here. So we turned it on, and I found a country station, and we was used to clean and listen to that country music. And Alan and Dwayne came home, and he said, what in the heck is that noise? And I said, well, it's country music, Alan. And he said, not in my house. So he marches over to that machine, and he changes the channel to opera, or something close enough. And I look at Joyce and said, can we turn that off? It was not conducive to cleaning. Yes, it didn't motivate us to clean very much. But anyway, we didn't ever do that no more because we didn't want to stop her. Alan was always there for me whenever I needed him. I had knee replacements, he was there for me. And Joanne, she was such a sweetheart. And he asked me, he said, would you help me take care of Joanne? And how could I say no? I could not say no. And her and I got pretty close. And it broke my heart. And she just kept getting worse and worse. And Alan, he was just standing right there, just solid. I mean, he was a solid husband to her. And I remember one time they played bridge at the house there, and she got to where she couldn't have the girls coming to the house anymore. And so Alan snuck, and they went to Joan's house, and he snuck out, and she realized it was Tuesday. And she, oh my God, get ready, I'll get it ready. And I said, no, you're not playing today. Oh, she got so mad at me. And we had to lock the door because she kept coming out and getting lost. Anyway, she said, I'm going to play bridge. And I said, I don't think so. She said, you open that door. I said, I can open it. She said, yes, you can. I mean, we argued for half an hour. And finally, I just had to walk away. So when Alan got home, I got him out in the garage, and I said, don't ever do that to me. I said, please don't. I said, you need to tell her when you're going, because we have just had a heck of a time here. And he said, oh, Rhonda, I'm so sorry. So anyway, he told her the next time, and she was okay with it once I told her. But we had a lot of fun times. We had some hard times. Melissa and I tried to shower her. She didn't like that very well. So we had some good times and we had some bad times. But they've always been like my family. I just feel like a daughter. And they make me feel that way still. And I'm going to miss him so much. And I still miss Joanne every day. But I love you guys. I'll always be there for you.
Yeah, my sister Kay even would go over and help them, with I think nighttime.
No, it was in the afternoon.
In the afternoons.
Yeah, Stan wouldn't let me.
No, Stan would let her do nice, but yeah, she would come over and help, with Joanne in the afternoons.
So I'm David Combs. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I knew Alan from Sons of Norway, as it was mentioned. He was an enthusiastic and diehard Sons of Norway members. My parents were founding charter members of the local lodge, and so they were very fast friends for my parents' entire until my parents died. But anyway, I have many members from that time, and one of my favorite things was we built a Viking ship for a float in Alan's garage over on Oak Trail. And it wasn't, as our friend Zach would say, a cartoon boat. This is a full-scale model of a Viking ship. compound curves and everything. And what I most remember is Alan, with great delight, carving the dragon head for the prow of the boat, and I got to help him with that. That was such a great thing. But the other thing I wanted to say is that I was very intrigued by Drew's story of Alan helping a couple by offering his living room for the wedding. Raise your hand if you've been married in Alan's living room. My wife and I were also married in Alan's living room, and it was over on in his other houses over at Chandler Park. But we knew we didn't want a conventional wedding, Christy and I, and so we wrote our own vows, figured out our own music, and we had a Jewish professor that was dear to Christy's heart and mine now too, who officiated. We were surrounded by Norwegian trolls, and in the background was Alan's hyper-realistic wooden dinosaur skulls. It was awesome. It was just so right for us. He's so generous and kind. Really miss it.
Our closing words are the poem Peace, My Heart by Rabindranath Tagore. Peace, my heart, let the time for the parting be sweet. Let it not be a death, but completeness. Let love melt into memory and pain into songs. Let the flight through the sky end in the folding of the wings over the nest. Let the last touch of your hands be gentle like the flower of the night. Stand still, O beautiful end, for a moment, and say your last words in silence. I bow to you and hold up my lamp to light you on your way. sharing this wonderful celebration of Alan's life. And please join his family for a reception behind us in the rooms behind this wall. So thank you for coming.